Welcome to the VA North Texas Healthcare System, Dallas Veterans Affairs Medical Center. We're delighted that you all are here today. I'm Alan Clark. I'm Public Affairs Officer, and we're very, very glad that we have so many special guests here today. And the people from the Khe Sanh Veterans Association have come out from their convention out at the Mandalay Hotel in Irving, and we welcome everyone that's joined us today. I would like to begin with some welcoming remarks for our 21st Veterans Forum today from Dan Heers, who's the Assistant Director of VA North Texas Healthcare System.
On behalf of Mr. Alan Harper, the Director of the VA North Texas Healthcare System, I would like to welcome you to the 21st Veterans Forum. I'd like to say a special thanks to Alan and all the people that help him putting these forums on. I think they just get better and better every time we have one. I think Alan's getting a little tired of doing them, but maybe we'll get him to do a few more of them for us. I think all of our employees gain from hearing stories of our veterans and the people that we're trying to care for. I'd like to say a special welcome to the Khe Sanh Veterans Association. A number of those folks are here with us today. And then I'd like to thank all those people that are participating in the program today and all of you for taking time out to come to the program. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dan. Our invocation will be filled in by Ray Addington, who is one of our panelists today, instead of Owen Matthews, who is the chaplain of the group that's out here at the convention, but he wasn't able to make it at the last minute. So Ray Addington will present our invocation, and we'll just stay seated for this, and we'll rise for the pledge.
Uncover. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us this opportunity to come as a forum and to discuss our situation in Vietnam and to remember those guys that we served with. We now ask for your blessing over this body and over this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem? And our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Russell Turner, who is the president of the Khe Sanh Veterans Association. He's in town visiting from Arnold, Missouri.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our national anthem will be led by Bill Atkinson, who is on our Medical Administration Service staff. He will be accompanied by Sandy Gillen, whose brother is a Vietnam veteran, and Bill is an Army veteran.
and the home of the
please be seated? Thank you very much, Bill and Sandy. Appreciate that. They'll be back on at the end of the program. We have some special introductions to make today. I'm not sure that everybody I planned on having here has arrived, but if they're not here by the time right now, they're not going to get introduced. Our first introduction is Colonel Doc Ballard. Please stand, Doc, and face the audience. Doc is obviously to you all as a Medal of Honor recipient, as a Navy corpsman in Vietnam in May 1968. He was in the Battle of Khe Sanh and in the siege, and was wounded several times, has 3 confirmed Purple Hearts. The other 5 times he was wounded, he just took care of himself as a Navy corpsman. But he placed himself over a grenade that, thank the good Lord, as it turns out, had already exploded, but he dropped on it to save wounded people that he was taking care of on the battlefield. We're very honored to have you with us, and Doc will take a minute at the end of the program. Doc's going to take a minute at the end of the program to tell you all about a special project in which he's involved. Our Chief of Staff, Dr. Robert Cronin, is here, and we're glad you joined us, Dr. Cronin. As Sandra Manatra come, raise your hand if you have. Sarah Wells is here from Congressman Burgess's office. Stand up, Sarah. We're always delighted to have our congressional representatives, staffers come to join us. Colonel Ken Cordier is a member of our community council, and Ken is a retired Air Force colonel. He was a NAMPOW, which means he was a POW in North Vietnam for 6.5 years, a member of our national committee on POWs and MIAs. Joe Pena is a community council member, as is Ken. And Joe Pena, stand up, Joe. He's owner of the Paz Group Consultants, and we're delighted to have you both with us today. I would like to have all members of the Khe Sanh Veterans Association, or even if you aren't a member of that association and you're here today, and I know we have one member of our nursing staff that was at Khe Sanh, but is not a member of your organization. So y'all zoom in on him to get to be a member. But will all Khe Sanh veterans please stand at this time? We're delighted to have you all with us. Thank you, gentlemen. We're delighted to have you all as our guests. And at the end of the program, I'll invite you all up to the stage, and we'll have a group picture, and I'll send enough pictures of the people that are in it to Ray to get out to all of y'all. So make sure Ray knows that you were in the picture. At this time, we'll begin the panel presentation, and it would have been overseen by Lieutenant General Dick Carey, who was a full colonel during the battle, and apparently was at one of those coastal cities running the supply and the backup and so forth for the operation. And but he had a death in the family, so he wasn't able to make it today. So I set up the Q&A, and I'll do the best that I can as an Army guy, okay, that wasn't anywhere near that battle. I was back in Army Hospital at the time of this time of Tet in this battle. Okay, I'd like to begin with Bill Martin on your far left. Gunny Martin was a 20-year careerist and went to Vietnam in the 18th year of his Marine career. He was a Sunset High School graduate and enlisted in 1950. And on his second tour to Vietnam in August of 67, he went to Khe Sanh, and he was the operations chief for the 1st of the 13th Marines Artillery Battalion. So I'd like to start with you a little bit of the background for this action. And by the way, when we talk about different places that are geographically, the map of the actual Khe Sanh main base is on the back page, and then the overall area map is on the inside cover. So you'll see places that were the outside bases from the main base, and also the Long Vey Special Forces camp in the lower left. So somebody's going to talk about that. But I'd like to start off here with you, Gunny, and that is, what were the sources pre-siege of enemy activity in the area that kind of keyed you all in as to what was going to happen?
Thank you, Alan. First, I'd like to thank the VA hospital for having this program and inviting us out. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I got into Khe Sanh in August of '67, and as time went on from August until the siege started, the main source, we had a lot of intelligence sources that monitored the traffic on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was just, I don't know whether that's listed on the map or not. I didn't look at the map, but it's about 8 or 8.5 miles west of the Khe Sanh base, and that trail was monitored by different intelligence sources. The Special Forces camp, and we had an FOB-3 there at Khe Sanh that had intelligence patrols out, and we also had our own Bravo Company 3rd Recon Battalion was there, and they were out, and they started, the closer we got to December and January, the more activity they seen in the area. One of the interesting things is I ended up flying out of there on the 19th of January to go on R&R. And as I was flying out to go, was headed to Da Nang and then to Bangkok on R&R, as we were pulling up and out, I'm looking down and I see troops on the hills that I know are not ours. And that just boggled my mind. And then 2 days later, when I'm sitting in Bangkok and pick up a paper and says, Khe Sanh's under siege, that really blew my mind. So that's pretty well how we got the information, just mainly through intelligence sources and recon patrols primarily, is how we knew that the activity was increasing. They had also planted sensors on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and they had noticed an increase in activity on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And, you know, just before the siege, we were in a no-fire on the DMZ. We couldn't fire in the DMZ, so that gave them free access to the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
The DMZ, to those of you that don't know all these acronyms and shorthand, was the demilitarized zone, which was the area between North and South Vietnam, and it was just north of the Khe Sanh area. The Ho Chi Minh Trail was 7 or 8 miles off to the left side of your map. Penny, would you bring these program to each of the three gentlemen? They were up here and didn't get them on their seats. Bill, the original Khe Sanh contingent had been about 2,800 originally, and then during the height of the siege was about 6,000, I understand.
That's correct. When I got
up
there in the summer, it was we had 2,800 troops, and again, as the activity increased, they started bringing in more troops, and we ended up with a maximum, I think, of about 6,500 at the peak during the siege.
Ray Addington is our second gentleman here as our guest. He graduated from Thomas Jefferson High School in Dallas and attended Texas Tech for 2 years before joining the Marines. He was assigned to India Company, 3rd Battalion, 26th Marine Regiment. What was your assignment in the Khe Sanh area, Ray, after your 30-day crash course in the Vietnamese language?
Thank you, Alan. I was sent up to the Hill on January the 17th to rejoin my company, India, after I'd gone through a 30-day crash course in Vietnamese so that this Texan could be able to speak Tex Vietnamese, and got up there and went to see Captain Dabney, our company commander, and reported into him, and I said, I'm back, and he said, good, go find a hooch, and I'll call you when I need you. So basically that's what my duty was, to come when he called.
And there was, in that first time that you were there was on January 19th, you'd mentioned there was a recon unit that was returning. So would you kind of catch us up on that, and then getting up to the point of the battle, which I'll ask you about?
Actually, it was around January 17th. There was a recon team coming back out of North Vietnam, working their way back to Khe Sanh, and they were attacked. And we sent a reinforced squad down to assist them, to help them and rescue them. And we were able to get most of them back. The next day, Captain Dabney sent reinforced squads down to see what caused the incident the first day, and they got attacked. And so Captain Dabney, when we got them back, called down to Khe Sanh and got permission to mount a full company movement, of which we took our 3 rifle platoons, leaving our weapons platoon on the hill as rear support. And we took off. That was January the 20th.
Now, when you say the hill, you mean 881 South or North?
881 South is where we
okay.
were.
Yeah, and that's on the left-hand page, just above Welcome, and it is northwest of the Khe Sanh combat base, about 5 miles, right? And that's basically where you were outside the main base.
Right.
Okay, Ray, you were in that 10-hour battle, so that kind of immediately preceded the siege's beginning. So describe that battle, the results, and your physical condition after the battle.
We started off early that morning before sunup, and it was pretty cold and foggy and damp that morning, so most of us had put on extra clothing to protect us from the elements. And we left the hill and started our march towards Hill 881 North, which was over in North Vietnam. During our walk towards that hill, the 1st platoon took the point position, and as they were approaching a small ridge line prior to Hill 881 North, they were attacked, and 50 caliber machine guns opened up on them, and a good majority of them were wounded. Fortunately, no one was killed at that point, but they lost about 50% of their strength from that machine gunner. We finally were able to secure that ridge line, and during that time period, Captain Dabney had given the orders to the 3rd platoon to take Hill 881 North. He handed me a pair of field glasses and asked me to look over at the hill, and I did, and all you could see were Vietnamese running around the top of it. It looked like ants on top of an ant hill. And I told him there's a lot of guys up there. And, well, that's not exactly what I said, but something close to that. And anyway, he told the platoon commander of the 3rd platoon to go ahead and take the hill. So they started up the hill. They had a recon team with them that we were going to leave behind us so that they could go back out and do some recon after we left. But the firing was so intense, the recon team joined 3rd Platoon and became another squad for them. And as they were going up the hill, that hill is covered in tall elephant grass. And it's called that because it's very big and very high and very tall, and you really can't see anything around you. And the recon team got detached from the 3rd Platoon and got lost. The 3rd Platoon commander, trying to find that recon team, got killed during that time period, as well as his platoon sergeant. And a young corporal called back to Captain Dabney and basically, in a panicky voice, was saying that he was the senior NCO at that time period. So Captain Dabney sent the 2nd Platoon, which was platoon commander was Lieutenant Thomas, who was my platoon before I became, quote unquote, the interpreter. And the 2nd Platoon was then sent to reinforce and to basically save the 3rd Platoon. And they started up the hill, and Lieutenant Thomas was able to find the missing reconners, those that were still alive, and retrieve them and bring them back. And the rest of the members of the 2nd Platoon continued to go up the hill, which, by the way, there's several of them right out here in the audience.
You mentioned, one thing that when I interviewed you, Ray, you mentioned about your physical condition at the end of that 10-hour battle. Just describe that physical condition.
Like I said, we started off with extra clothing because it was cold and wet. By the end of the day, we were all burning up, and I thought we were going to die of heat prostration before a bullet got us. And by the time we got back up to the top of the hill that evening, we were all totally exhausted and in a severe state of shock. I don't think there was one of us that didn't feel the shock.
And I noticed that you mentioned you were all choking from the heat and the smoke from the burning grass in the area. Ray, you described in pretty graphic terms your emotions. I know it's hard to talk about that, but part of the reason we have these things is to explain to people who weren't there, what happened and how we felt after these actions. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, we got back up to the hill that night, and basically we were pretty shocky, and the company commander, Captain Dabney, came and just kind of put us around the hill. We had a little trench line around the hill that was about 1 foot deep, 2 feet deep and 2 feet wide, and so we went on 100% that night, expecting to be attacked that night. And fortunately, we weren't. But the next day, after being in a full battle for 10 hours and then up all night long, we were all very exhausted. And the next day, of course, is the 21st, and we sat there, and some of us went and got in our hooches and got some shut-eye. But then that's when the MVA decided to open up on us and started throwing in the mortars and the rockets.
Well, I know that this was really hard on you, Ray, because in that battle you lost 2 platoon commanders and 2 platoon sergeants as KIAs, and total 8 U.S. KIAs and many wounded in action. And that was really a tough time for you, I know. The enemy had 3-1 superiority over your Marine unit in this action, and what did this enemy unit represent?
Well, we were later to find out that this was the spearhead of a full MVA regiment, and that we just happened to trip up the group that was designated to attack our hill on January 21st. Our sister hill, 861, they did get the full brunt of their attack on January 21st.
Okay, thank you, Ray. We'll come back to both Gunny and Ray. But John Rowland is our third guest. Thank you for being here, John. John graduated from Arlington Heights High School in Fort Worth in 1967, then joined the Marines. He was assigned to the 26th Marines as a grunt. He went to Texas Christian University, graduated with a psychology degree. Later, he went first to Hill 881 and then to the Ponderosa, which is on your map there in the middle, with 1 patrol before the siege. John, the siege began, like we just said, on January 21st, 68. Describe the conditions as you recall them during the siege.
First, before the siege actually started, I think that day, Delta Company, with a reinforced company about 160 strong, was sent out to Khe Sanhville to check on the CAC unit that had some activity, and we got about 150 yards from the village, and we were warned that we were walking into a regimental ambush that they had set up. And as soon as we decided that we needed to think about that a little bit and head back to the base, they opened up on us, and it was kind of a race to get back. That night was when the first major barrage of artillery came in. Prior to that, we were living in tents, pretty much, with just some slit trenches beside the tents. And we probably were putting 10 guys in a hole big enough for 5. It was quite chaotic. The next couple of days was really, it's kind of hard to explain, but we had a shovel in our hands more than we had a rifle. We were filling sandbags, digging bunkers, and going down, all the while expecting a frontal attack. We was probably up 22 hours a day for the first few days. You get a couple hours sleep in between the work details and the standing watch and the incoming. I don't know how many thousands of sandbags that we filled, but there wasn't anybody complaining. I know that.
And you had mentioned, just as an add-on, that you were always short of food and water during the course of the time you were there.
Prior to the siege, we had a pretty good little mess hall. It was pretty easy duty, we thought, but when supplies started getting short, they'd put us on a sea ration, a 3-day, which later went down to 2, and a water ration. It was, I don't know that it was anybody ever went without a meal, but you never had all that you wanted.
We'll hear about Ray's condition toward the end here, so what he looked like and felt like, as he described to me. And then you had an analogy, John, to what you would have perceived the attack at, the invasion at Omaha and Utah Beach, especially Omaha. So you kind of had an analogy to that.
Well, when somebody asks you to try to explain something of what incoming and artillery barrage, it's hard to explain to somebody. But pretty much everybody's seen the movie Saving Private Ryan. And when they first hit the beach at Omaha, the sound effects from that movie, I wouldn't make an analogy to the battle itself, but just trying to explain what incoming sounded like and what it felt like hitting around you. They could look at everybody that's seen the movie could get an idea of what I was talking about.
Well, y'all were bombarded during that 11-week period with rockets and mortars, obviously, and then they had some big artillery rounds that would come in, and somebody's going to talk about that eventually. Bill, you had mentioned already about leaving on R&R. Then when you came back, you were missing some equipment, and then how did you kind of land at Khe Sanh, coming back in, and the siege had already started?
That was real interesting. I flew back into Da Nang from Bangkok and then up to Phu Bai. And at Phu Bai, I was getting ready to board a plane. I was the only person aboard the plane that didn't have a flak jacket or a helmet. And what was happening is every airplane that came into Khe Sanh got hit, got shelled. They'd fire mortars. They'd fire mortars and or artillery and mortars and on the aircraft as it came in. And as a C-123 was a great airplane to come in because it comes down in a real steep descent and quick landing, and it dropped the ramp. And the pilot said, when I drop the ramp, I don't want anybody to get any luggage. I don't want you to do anything. Just get off the airplane and find a place to hide. Well, on this map, where it shows the airstrip there, the double portion of the airstrip, this map here is for later in the siege. When the siege first started, my headquarters, the artillery battalion headquarters, was in the middle of the camp. And when that ramp came down, I just lit out, took off down that ramp, and I ran all the way to the FDC, the Fire Erection Center. I didn't slow down for nothing. And I didn't know whether any rounds came in or not. I just made it out of there and got over there without a scratch. So I was quite pleased with that.
Bill, how would you basically describe fulfilling your mission then through the end of the siege during that time frame? Kind of describe, what it was like on a daily and, kind of weekly basis.
Well, mainly during the day, we'd get shot at most of the time during the day. Most of the incoming came during the day at the main campus, so to speak, and we didn't do a lot during the day because all of the guns that were shooting us were outside our range, our maximum range. They were on a hill called Koh Rock, which was about 8 to 10 miles west of us, up on a big high hill, and they were shooting at us from there. So we couldn't return fire, and the rockets that came in, if we didn't have an FO or AO to observe where they were coming from, there wasn't any sense in shooting. So during the day there wasn't a lot going on, but at night we fired generally all night long around the hills and around the base, and utilizing. I mentioned these sensors earlier, and what the sensors were is that the Air Force and the Navy seeded the area around Khe Sanh, particularly around the hills and over on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They seeded it with transmitters. And these transmitters activated when people got around the transmitters, and the ones on the Ho Chi Minh Trail were monitored by somebody way to the west of us in Cambodia, I believe, and the ones that the Navy seeded in and around the base were monitored by aircraft, and the information would come into our central office area, the central area where the colonel was and all the bigwigs there at the base. That information would come in there, the S2, and then they would filter down targets to us, and we would shoot. Now, over the length of the siege, we fired 158,000 rounds of artillery ammunition. So we fired every day, and we never had an ammo shortage. A lot of people were concerned about our supplies and what have you. Bullets and beans, that's what they got us. We had C rations and bullets. That's what they sent us. Now, getting it to everybody, like the people on the hill, was more of a problem than it was to us. But and they also had to bring in water, as John mentioned. We stayed plenty busy, and I was on watch all the time. I mean, if something come up, I was there. I was fortunate when they shot our bunker out from under us at the old bunker, and Seabees came in and built us a new bunker. It was very secure, and it was big enough that I stayed in it for the entire siege. So, but we stayed plenty busy. We were not lacking for activity.
John, you mentioned about the paradropping of supplies in. Would you tell about how that worked during the siege?
Well, after the C-130s and 123s couldn't land or couldn't drop off on touchdowns, they started just paradropping in a lot of the supplies. And if a pallet full of C rations happened to miss where it was aiming, it didn't take very long for the Marines in that area to get their own distribution system. You'd see a pallet hit, and half a dozen Marines with 2 cases under each arm hauling in between before the supply to people. They threatened to shoot any of the Marines on site that came around any of the airdrops.
That didn't happen, did it? Oh, they did. The enemy. I thought you meant our people.
Our people.
Oh, our people did.
Yeah.
Would you any other things to the daily life that you might add to what Bill mentioned relative to the daily siege? Any other different things you'd like to add, or other things? You are kind of always subject to the ground attacks.
Well, us being on the line, we wasn't really privileged to a whole lot of what was going on, other than we pulled anytime there was the threat of an activity. It was a full alert. We were always having to pull duty. We got to sleep in 2-hour shifts. If you got 4 to 6 hours, 4 hours and 24, that was a lot. If you could sleep through, as Bill was saying, at night, if incoming wasn't coming in, it was going out. So it was always a very noisy place. You had to come up with ways to entertain yourself, other than waiting on an anticipated attack. I think the worst part was not knowing what was going to happen or if it's going to happen. It was just having to be on a constant vigil on anticipating an attack. We learned to live around the incoming. you could duck and you could get in your bunker, but the part of just having to wait it's a foreign training to a Marine. A Marine isn't trained to sit back and wait on something, and it was all new, a new strategy for us.
And there had been some modest NVA penetration from time to time, but any major breakthroughs the line did not happen during the siege, I understand?
No, there was a couple of attacks. There was a major one at the end of the airstrip one night, and we was a Sparrowhawk, which were reinforcing that area. Remember, we had to go down there, and while we were running to that end of the wire, they had told us to fix bayonets. I know that the next day that there was, I don't know how many was killed we took off the wire, but as far as the enemy penetrating our perimeter, they didn't.
What about what happened to B Company?
February 25th, Bravo Company, which was just to the left of us, we were located on what we call the Ponderosa. That was our part of the line. They sent a patrol out and came under attack. There was 66 Marines that went out, and only 6 made it back, and all 6 of those were wounded. The other 60, we wasn't able to recover until after the siege. Delta Company it happened so close. Delta Company we wanted to help. They wouldn't let us go out. I mean, the word had already come back. They had actually got ambushed, 2 ambushes. They let part of them go out, and the feeling of watching something go down and not being able to help it's hard to explain that.
Ray, the day after your 10-hour battle we spoke about, the siege began, and you were on the outpost at Hill 881 South, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah. And what were your daily experiences during the bombardment from that 5 miles away from the main base camp?
Well, like John pointed out, we spent more time with a shovel in our hand than with a rifle in our hand because, like I said, we had this little 2-foot deep trench, and that wasn't going to protect anybody. So we spent a lot of time digging. We averaged about 3 hours of sleep out of every 24, and we dug a very deep trench, 10 feet deep, 5 feet wide. And we put gun emplacements on the outer side, and we put little holes on the inside that we would crawl into to sleep and protect ourselves. During the daytime, just like these guys said, it was a constant bombardment. We were being hit by 2 types of mortars, 82s and 122s, consistently. There are also a couple of snipers who decided to have fun with us as well. And so most of the day was keeping our heads down, and most of the night was digging and trying to observe what the movement that they were doing. Later, as the siege progressed into Khe Sanh, they were being hit by rockets, and we were able, from our position, to see the smoke that the rockets were emitting as they first took off. And we found out that if we would key our mics and tell Khe Sanh base, give them a signal that we saw a rocket take off, they would have about a 5-second time period to get their heads down. So we would sit up there during the daytime and watch for the rocket launches, and as soon as we'd see it, we'd say, rockets, rockets, rockets. And guys in the base were able to get some cover.
When your resupply choppers landed, what did you all have to do?
Well, during that time period, in the beginning, they were being hit pretty hard. They would come down into an area, and the NVA had those LZs figured out, so we were losing some choppers. So the general that was supposed to be here today, General Carey, he developed a flying system called the Super Gaggle, and that was a series of helicopters all flying at one time, and then one of them would drop down and drop all their supplies. So the NVA never knew exactly where these guys were going to land. And during that time period, we would just start throwing out all the mortars and all the machine gun fire that we could just to try to keep the enemy's head down while we were being resupplied.
John, talk about this enemy trench line that surrounded y'all.
We was told that the perimeter around Khe Sanh stretched about 5 miles, and we had 5 miles of trench, and it was estimated that about a click out, they had a trench line all the way around our base, and they were using a tunnel system to get in and move about without being fired upon. There's people that said that they could hear them digging at night when they started getting closer. I think that was one of the reasons Bravo Company went out, was to check on trenches coming into the base. I think there was also an estimate at the height of the siege that there was between 35 and 55,000 NVA at one time that was encircling us.
We'll talk a little bit about the Air Force support. People like Ken would like to hear about it. John, you brought it up. Would you like to talk about the Air Force support?
Sure. We probably wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for the support that the Air Force gave us. One of our big entertainments was watching the Phantoms come in and drop their rounds. We'd get out and cheer them on. They dropped their HE rounds and their napalm. You could feel the heat and smell the smoke from the napalm. That's how close it was dropping. Sometimes the 52s, when they were dropping, it'd be like we were in an earthquake. The ground would just shake under us, and it was like, you get this real happy, proud feeling that that somebody up there is helping. We could watch at night. There was C-130 or C-140 that Puff would be firing, and you'd just see a continuous red line. And they said that there was 4 rounds in between it, and would cover every square foot of a football field. Per inch of a football field. And you'd see it, and then you'd hear it. And Puff was flying over pretty regular. B-52s were dropping. You never saw the B-52s themselves. You just, all of a sudden, the rumble. And you knew that at least we had all the air support that we needed.
Bill, as we were talking, of course, it's a very serious topic, and as I was interviewing the three of you, I was very touched by the seriousness of it all. But you actually said, Alan, would you like to hear some funny things? And you've got 2 or 3 funny things to mention. I'd like you to bring them up at this point.
Well, as any of you that have been in combat know, that you've got to have humor. You've got to find something humorous out there to laugh at, and we can always find things to laugh at. If it first off, we had my captain, the S3's Jeep got hit, and so we took a picture of that, and there was a guy that had worked for me that was kind of a yard bird, and I sent him a picture of that Jeep and told him I needed him back over there to fix that Jeep. And he sent me a letter back and said, Gunny, screw you, fix your own damn Jeep. And another time we had a fire mission come down. There was an elephant loaded with ammo tied to a tree. Now, so when a fire mission comes in, we go back and give a fire order, and we tell the observer what we're going to fire. We told him we was going to fire battery 1 as in a fire for effect. And so we decided to play with this thing. I mean, we got an elephant tied to a tree, and we're shooting at it with a 155 howitzer. And so we're shooting at it, and then we got adjusted on the target, and then we fired for effect, and we only fired 1 gun. And he comes back and he says, you only fired 1 gun. We said, you only got 1 elephant. And another time, an AO, an aerial observer, they always had fun. They were out there flying around, waiting to get shot down, and so they would try to find amusing stuff to give us. And this one day, a guy calls up and he gives us a fire mission, and he said, there's rockets preparing to fire. And then he had a little bit of hesitation, and he said, you might want to expedite this mission. They're firing at you.
Thank you for adding a degree of levity to what is obviously a very serious topic and siege for all of you all. Ray, Describe the times you took shrapnel and kind of talk a little bit about that and, kind of the criteria for a Purple Heart and so forth.
Up on the hill, with all the shrapnel that was flying around up there, I don't think there's one of us that didn't have some of it in us somewhere. But the main criteria for leaving the hill as a medevac was that you were seriously wounded. So if all you got was a little shrapnel shards or a few cuts, the good docs up there, they took care of that. And then you went right back to work. The criteria to get a Purple Heart in the Marine Corps is to be sent to the med. And
The med is the medical aid station?
Right, medical aid station. If you're just sitting up there with a few little scratches, you weren't getting a Purple Heart.
Pretty tough criteria, that's for sure. Okay. John, what was your attitude about the wounds and the Purple Heart? Do you have something to add to that?
Pretty much like Ray said, if you just had, if the corpsman could fix you up, if you could stitch you up, which they did pretty good jobs, we got to take our hat off to the corpsmen. I think the Marine Corps as a whole, the combat Marines hold the corpsman in probably the highest esteem of any branch. But if they could stitch you up, it was no big deal. You went back to your duty. You'd feel guilty trying to get a Purple Heart out of something when somebody else is, like Ray said, is severely injured or life-threatening, and that's not what you're thinking about at that time. You're ready. All you want to do is just get back. Nobody wants a Purple Heart. If you could go through without one, you're not only lucky, you're just, you're lucky. But no, nobody in our outfit was looking for a Purple Heart or trying to get one. They weren't lobbying for one. If it was bad enough, you'd get it.
You mentioned that you experienced some funny things. I'd like you to mention a couple of those.
Well, we entertained ourselves a lot with the rats that was up there.
Our puppies.
Yeah, you talk about rats like people here in the States think of them, but these rats were like...
They weren't mice.
No, they were like cats. You could take... if you set a rat trap out and it wasn't tied down, you'd hear it click and the rat would just run off with your trap. Or you'd find a trap with a leg in it the next day. And then every now and then you'd see three-legged rats running around. But we would open up cans of peanut butter or cheese and set them out and back off a little ways, and we'd throw our K-bars at them when they came out, just practicing up on so that was one of our entertainments. Another was in between incoming. If we had a little bit of free time, we played a lot of, we'd get combat football in between the bunkers. And actually, you could probably get worse injuries doing that than you would on some of the shrapnel. Some of those guys were pretty big and wanted to get off their frustrations, but...
You probably have some service-connected vets from that, right?
And one of the funnier things, too, is since water was in so short a supply, if you got a shower and you got a chance to get out, strip down, soap up, the showers sometimes wouldn't cooperate. They'd quit before you got through, and you're stuck with all this soap suds all over you and no water to wash off with. And, we found ways to entertain ourselves.
Ray, I'm just going to talk about this, and because we're running out of time here, and I want to have each of you have some, a minute or so to kind of tie it all together as you saw it. But what eventually lifted the siege was that you Marines did not give up. You told me, and then the firing on the enemy eventually decimated the NVA, and they left the area. So that basically finally broke the siege. And then when the siege was just about over, you'd been there since the very beginning, and from your company, I think you were one of the 5 left out of your company that originally started.
From the original group, I was one of 40.
One of 40, yeah. And then you went out on R&R, and I wanted you to describe what you looked like and weighed when the siege was over.
When I got to Vietnam, I weighed 195 pounds. When I left the hill, I weighed 145 pounds. Unlike my buddies who were down in Khe Sanh base, we didn't have any showers.
And so what you're saying,
Or peanut butter either.
what you're saying is this: basically for 11 weeks, y'all didn't bathe, and you grew a beard.
Right.
And when you went in on R&R toward the end of the siege there, the people kind of got as far away from you all as they could, because they didn't know what you all were when you went back to Phu Bai or Da Nang.
Yeah, I was choppered out of there and went down to Khe Sanh base, and then caught a caribou out of there that ended up in Da Nang. They were sending me to Hawaii for R&R, and I didn't realize we were going to land in Da Nang, but we got off in Da Nang, and landing in Da Nang airport is like landing at DFW. It's a very cosmopolitan airport. There are a lot of military, but there are also a lot of civilian. And I'm walking across the tarmac with this one other guy, and we've got all of our battle gear on. We got a full beard. We haven't bathed in 3.5 months. We haven't shaved in 3.5 months. We haven't brushed our teeth in 3.5 months. We haven't had a change of clothes in 3.5 months. Parts of me were hanging out of the clothes that shouldn't be hanging out, and we were just, pretty grisly looking. And we entered into the terminal, and it was like Moses parting the Red Sea. The people just split apart as we walked in. And as we went into the terminal, I saw a little sign that said USO, and I said, they have food. So we went into this truck and started just grabbing food as we were walking around this trailer. And we come to the other end, and lo and behold, there's a cash register. Well, we hadn't seen money in 9 months. So I started to turn around to put the food back, and a wonderful Army colonel, full bird colonel, said, "Wait a minute, come on out, I'll buy that. Who are you?" Because he couldn't
Didn't
tell
know if you were in our military or
he
not.
He wasn't real sure. He just noticed that we looked like we were American. And so anyway, he bought our food, and there were some reporters there that wanted to question us when we found out we were from Khe Sanh, because reporters weren't getting any information about that area. And so the colonel said, "Talk to him, but I'll shut you up if they ask you a question. I don't want them to know." And at the end of the thing, he said, "Where are you guys going?" He said, "Well, we're trying to get to Quang Tri to get some clothes to go on R&R. And he said, "How are you going to get there?" And I said, "We don't know." And he had a DC-3 assigned to him, and he took us up to Quang Tri.
Well, I'm glad the Army supported your operation at Khe Sanh. I'd like you all to take about a minute and close with your kind of summation and whatever you want to say about the siege, about your participation, any bonding, and so forth, and how you feel about things today. I would like to start with you, Bill.
This was my second tour in Vietnam, and it was like two different wars. The first one I was down around Chu Lai, we were fighting the VC, and I come up to Khe Sanh and we're fighting the NVA. That's a conventional war. I mean, we were not fighting ghosts up there. We were fighting people, and one of the things that troubled me up there was I was getting mail from my mother here in Dallas, sending me articles out of the newspaper telling how bad our morale was. Our morale was never low. Our morale was high. Yeah, we had some down moments, because like when Bravo Company went out and got annihilated, that hurt everybody in the camp. When Long Bay fell, when the Special Forces camp fell, that hurt everybody. That was depressing. The night that on February the 5th and 6th, when 881 South when we fired all night long, and they had a regimental size attack forming, and those kind of things will take something out of you, but our morale was good there, and the newspapers and media was all painting it like we were all in bad shape up there, and that never occurred in my experience. Our morale was good, and John talked about the Air Force. We had we averaged 287 sorties a day for 77 days. We had all the air support. The only days, we had some days when they couldn't come in because of the weather. We averaged 33 B-52 drops a day. We had more ordnance dropped around Khe Sanh than all of World War II. Than all the ordnance dropped in World War II. We had more ordnance than they did in World War II. Just at Khe Sanh, a little 1.5 diameter place. We had the support. We had lots of support, and it was. No one ever felt that we were going to die there. Some of us died there, but we didn't ever feel that, we was going to get annihilated. In fact, just as a little aside, the first air cav came in there on the 1st of April to rescue us. Well, I'm going to tell you how we greeted them. We greeted them outside with cans of peanut butter, throwing it at them, right? We did not want to be rescued, let me assure you. So we were doing just fine. Thank you, and thanks again for inviting us.
Yeah. Ray. Well, listen, I'll tell you how they're feeling. They feel great. They feel great to be warriors. They feel great to be Marines. They feel great to have survived. They cheated death up there on that siege. And they're very proud veterans. They're proud to be Americans. They bonded with all their fellow veterans. And it's a great thing to be able to come back and be together and to be able to drink together and to eat together and to serve together and to love one another like they do at reunions and like we do at reunions. I want to thank all three of you all for being here. I'd like Doc Ballard to come up for a minute and talk about an effort that he's been involved with. And while he's up here talking, I'd like all the Khe Sanh veterans here, either association members or not, to come up. The three of you guys, if you stand in the front, we're going to end after Doc finishes here with the Marine Corps hymn. So I'd like for those of you all to come up here and face the audience.
There's no greater love than combat buddies. I'm sure there's some people out there in the audience that were not in Khe Sanh, but had similar experiences with your units and your wars and your efforts. And you can certainly identify that a group of individuals that served in combat that was willing to give up their lives to save their fellow servicemen, their countrymen. In an effort to try to bring all this together, we've looked around the country and we found that there really wasn't any place to commemorate or to remember our medical families, our doctors, our nurses, our corpsmen, our medics, our pilots that flew medevac. And so we've started an effort in the heartland here, and it's in Kansas City. On the Missouri side, and it's to build a monument and a memorial for all of the love and the memorialization of our medical families, whether you use Army, Navy, Marines, any of the services that had medical personnel. And in doing so, we've also built a youth education center there, and we're in the process of designing that for the benefit of teaching the new leaders of this great country some very basic skills about where we are, and that a lot of things happen to get us on third base. People are born on third base today, and they score. They think they've accomplished something, and we look and show in the youth education center exactly what roles the American soldiers and veterans paid and what price they paid. And so it all ties in together. And as we did in Khe Sanh and as we did everywhere else in every other conflict, a lot of our people that are sitting in this audience today may not have been here if it hadn't have been for some medical type guy that saved your grandfather's life during the Second World War, or maybe your dad's life in Korea. You know, we're writing a book. Tom Brokaw's happened to put it together, and it's another generation book that talks about the surviving generation. And the responses that we're getting is overwhelming on all the people that said, I was wounded and cared for, and I've got 6 grandchildren, and 6 kids and 36 grandchildren, and none of them would have been born if it hadn't have been for that corpsman, or that doctor, or that nurse, or that team. Because if you remember what a doctor and the medical people do, is they give their all in trying to help and trying to keep the wounded people and patients alive. They can't worry about their own personal safety. And as a Navy corpsman myself, out with the Marines, in and out of Khe Sanh, I can relate that, and I feel sorry, but I wear this medal for all the corpsmen. We got corpsmen out here today that really did a great job, and we love them. And the Marines summed it up a minute ago by saying there's no greater love that they hold higher than the Marine corpsmen. And we felt like we were Marine corpsmen. We were no longer Navy corpsmen. We were Marine corpsmen. And so that love has transpired clear to today. We still have the camaraderie and the love and the respect for each other that a lot of services don't take time to acknowledge. And it's a shame that you don't, because you've got great medics in the Army and you've got medics in the Air Force, but there's no greater love than the Marine Corps and their association with their corpsmen. So we're not selling anything, but if you have it in your heart or your mind or desire to help promote this memorial and youth education center, then we've got it on display over there, the memorial, and we're taking donations, and we also have books. We can't sell the books, but we have a commemorative book put out by the Congressional Medal of Honor Society itself that endorsed it, and it's got 116 Medal of Honor recipient stories in there. And I'm on lucky page 13, so I'll be glad to autograph you one. But we're thankful that you've got such a great VA here that takes time to remember to keep the promise. And we're very grateful that as veterans that we come home and we finally get the treatment that we deserve. But let's also remember the veterans that we've got over there today that are still doing the job that we once did. And hopefully through youth education and everything else, we can inspire their patriotic respect and theory and the desire to want to be an American, and let that override their personal fears and their complacency that we suffer in this country today. That's the biggest problem we have in this world today, is complacency. We're too politically correct to take a stance, and when we do, we're too afraid to take the next move. So I'm not here on a political agenda, but I'm here to support the troops that we've got in combat today, and wish them all well and hope they'll come back home safely.
Thank you, Doc. I notice Sandra Manatra from Congressman Frost's staff arrived. Would you please stand? Sandra, I want to thank you for joining us today also. Whatever your branch was, we're very ecumenical in the VA, and the comments that you made relative to the corpsmen and the medics and so forth, it relates to the kind of mission that we have when we come back, and the kind of people that are dedicated to our people. It's serving after the wars and taking care of our people back here. We have a lot of dedicated medical personnel and administrative personnel that take care of us here. The Marine Corps hymn will be, you all have the words, and so will everybody please stand as we close our program. We thank you very much for coming.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battle in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are Army and the Navy ever look on heaven's scene, they will find the streets are guarded by United States Marines.
It was hard for us Army and Navy and Air Force people to sing that last verse, but it's a tribute to how we feel about y'all. Thank y'all very much for being here. By the way, on Friday, July 16th, near the Motor Pool and Water Tower parking lot from 9 to 4:30, for a $5 donation, we're going to have a hot dogs and drinks and a cookout and a car wash that's for the homeless stand down 2004 to raise money for that. So if you're here on the 16th, I know you out-of-towners aren't, but the 16th, Friday, 9 to 4:30 car wash.